Next, to campaign politics. The two leading contenders for the Republican nomination spent the day campaigning in Colorado, where voters caucus tomorrow. Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, who came in a distant second in Saturday's Nevada caucus voting, turned his attention to the man who came in first, Mitt Romney.
And I think the number one difference between me and the other candidates in this race is the scale of change. Governor Romney doesn't represent profound change. He doesn't represent, if you look at what he did in Massachusetts, he basically accommodated liberal Democrats. And if you look at Romney Care and compare it to Obamacare, if you look at who he appointed as judges, they were people who made liberal Democrats happy. And he's not a bad person per se, but he's also not a person who goes in there with force and will and fundamentally changes things.
But Romney all but ignored Gingrich, deciding instead to focus almost entirely on the man he ultimately wants to unseat.
President Obama 3 years ago was on the Today Show, and he said if he couldn't turn the economy around in 3 years, he'd be looking at a one-term proposition. We're here to collect, all right? And by the way, he was on the Today Show again this morning, and on the anniversary of that statement, and he said he deserves a second term. No, Mr. President, you do not deserve a second term. I'm afraid, based upon the president's own standard, he has failed. He does not deserve a second term.
And now to some analysis from Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief of USA Today, and Stuart Rothenberg of the Rothenberg Political Report and Roll Call newspaper. Stu, let's go back to Betty Ann's piece, because it was kind of interesting that today, not on the stump, but online, Mitt Romney started a petition talking about how President Obama was forcing a secular vision on America. And we have heard Newt Gingrich and Rick Santorum talking about the president's war on religion. What's at stake?
Well, of course, there's a segment of the Republican Party that really cares about cultural issues. It's funny, after the last couple of elections, I've read somewhere mostly from Democrats, that cultural issues don't matter anymore. Social issues, it's all about jobs and the economy and the new economy. But there is a deep cultural division in this country, with most traditionalists with Republicans and most liberals or progressives with Democrats. And so when you get an issue injected into a campaign like this that's so controversial, I think it's bound to create reverberations where the politicians start to speak out.
A classic wedge issue.
It is.
Susan, does this mean that the Catholic votes in a monolithic way on this kind of issue? Is this a critical voting bloc?
No, well, it is a critical voting bloc. It's not monolithic by any means, but it's been an important voting bloc for President Obama. He made a big effort to go after Catholic voters in 2008. He won 54% of them, turning around a deficit that Senator Kerry had suffered 4 years earlier. And we find Catholic voters, about 20% of the U.S. electorate is Catholic. And in some swing states, they make up as much as a third of the electorate in places like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and New Mexico. One other thing to know about the Catholic vote is that a lot of Latinos are Catholic, and we know Latinos are going to be a crucial voting group this time, and many Latinos tend to be conservative socially. So it seems to me that President Obama has kind of opened a fight on this that may create some problems for him down the road.
I think this is exactly right. Look, we've had battle lines on abortion have been drawn for a long time, and we know there are pro-choice Catholics, there are pro-life Catholics. They're not going to change their views. They're going to vote the parties the way they have. But there are enough casual voters, independent voters who are Catholic, swing voters in key states that they could determine who wins some of the key states that Susan has identified here.
Let's talk about casual voters, or the not-so-casual voters that we saw in Nevada the other night. Turnout was not what was expected, what was predicted. Does that mean the enthusiasm gap has gone away?
Well, I think it raises some questions. Down also, turnout in Florida a week earlier was down from 2008. I think this does raise questions about how enthusiastic Republican voters really are about this field. We know they're enthusiastic about defeating Barack Obama. Are they enthusiastic about electing Mitt Romney or Newt Gingrich? I think this raises some questions.
And how much of this, Stu, is about the process of a caucus? We're going to see a couple more of those coming up. Is it about the way caucuses are conducted? People are less likely to show up?
I don't know about that. I'm not sure it's that. But I think there is some question about how revved up Republicans are. You would think that they should turn out to these events if they felt strongly about these candidates, and the fact that they aren't showing up in huge numbers. Predictions were that turnout would be bigger. Well, it wasn't. You have to wonder why.
I read that all 4 of the remaining candidates are going to be in 4 different states tomorrow night, which is the next round of voting. A lot of beauty contests, no delegates awarded. Is what we're seeing tomorrow in Missouri, Colorado, Minnesota? Is it a pit stop on the way to Super Tuesday?
Well, it's not one of those big election nights, I don't think. But it is important. For one thing, Mitt Romney, as you pointed out in the piece, wants us to think he already has the nomination, right? He's focusing his fire on Barack Obama. If he doesn't win all 3 of these, or at least 2 of them, doesn't that raise some questions about that, about whether he's really on his way? We know Rick Santorum is hoping to win in Missouri's non-binding beauty contest primary that they have tomorrow night, and that Minnesota seems quite competitive. I mean, we know Minnesota is a place with a lot of Tea Party voters, as Michelle Bachmann taught us.
And how about Newt Gingrich? He has been saying that he has a strategy which takes him through the South and to Texas, and there's a survival path there.
Right. His strategy goes to...
You crunch numbers,
his strategy goes to Texas on April 3rd. And there are a number of Southern primaries coming up throughout March. I think the key may well be Tennessee. I hate to pick one state already, but on Super Tuesday, you know, Massachusetts is there. You'd have to figure that Mitt Romney will do well. Georgia's there. You have to figure Newt Gingrich. Ohio's going to be a key state. But as the former speaker says, the South is the key. Tennessee is a southern state, but it's really a very mixed state. The eastern part of Tennessee is mountain Republican, more traditional moderate Republicans. Howard Baker, Senators Corker, Lamar Alexander. You go west in Tennessee, and you go to a more southern part of the state.
Doesn't Rick Santorum have a chance to break out in a place like that?
I think Rick Santorum is looking at a number of places to break out. You know, Mitt Romney wants to create momentum, the inevitability. I think Rick Santorum in all these states wants to become the alternative.
What do you think about Newt Gingrich's path?
I think hinging your hopes on Tennessee on Super Tuesday sounds a little frail to me. I mean, he's got to wait so long before he wins again. You know, he won in South Carolina. That gave him a lot of momentum. He's going to wait till March 6th to win again, and then he's going to win in Tennessee, not in Ohio, which is a mega state, a much more important state when you get to the general election. So, you know, you don't want to count Newt Gingrich out. He's come back twice when we didn't expect it. But this would be historic. We would not have seen before a case when somebody would come back from the deficit he has had now and get the nomination.
Can I respond to the shot she just took at me here? Just quickly, Susan. My point is that Newt Gingrich is talking about a Southern strategy. He's not going to win Virginia because he's not on the ballot. If he can't win Tennessee, that means he wins only Georgia. I think we'll discount that as his home state.
Well, let's not I saw Ron Paul being interviewed earlier today on CNN. He was asked, what is the one state you can win? And he said, oh, I don't worry about that stuff. That's somebody else's job. You see a state that he is positioned to win?
I think he might win Maine. You know, they report out on Saturday he's gotten big crowds in Maine. It's the kind of slightly quirky state, a caucus state, where a small band of really devoted followers perhaps can make a difference. But of course, I don't think Ron Paul is really running for the nomination. He's running to affect the course of American history, to affect the platform, to make a statement. So for him, it seems to me it's easier to see a path for him to stay in this all the way to Tampa than it is for the other 2 challengers.
You want to take a shot?
No, but I agree entirely. But if we're looking for a quirky state that Ron Paul could win, I think it says something about his overall prospects. So.
Okay, as you have said, every week sitting in this chair is Stu Rothenberg. Susan Page, thank you both very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gwen.